So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining today. My name is David Borkowsky. I'm the Global Solar Business Development Director for Sprague Solar. So we're also a division of Hartree Partners, which is a global company. I've been in the solar industry since 2016, 2017, so a good 9 years. And you might all be familiar with the different types of solar that I was initially familiar with, which were ground mounts, rooftop mounts, carport canopies. But what I'm here to talk to you today about is a solar solution that we've engineered specifically for placement on top of above ground storage tanks. So, brief review of the agenda. What I want to do today is relatively go through the slides fairly quickly so we have some time for Q&A at the end. But we're going to just describe how we got to doing solar on the tops of tanks, a little bit of the story behind that. Then go into what the benefits of doing that would be, and then the benefits that are specific to the solution that we've developed, so you can understand all the engineering that's gone into what we've done to develop this. And then there are certain operational considerations. Whenever you think about putting solar or any type of electrical system in an environment where there are volatile liquids, so we'll talk about all the operational considerations which we took into account when we developed this. And those specifically can be API inspections. We had to address that. The different safety features that needed to be built into this in order to make it work. And I'll talk about a sample project, and then we'll have some time for questions. So the picture here at the top is really the picture of our first solar tank in the nation. So back in 2017, we innovated a solution that could actually put solar on the top of the tank. Nobody else had done that before. So we were generating electricity that the terminals that we own and operate at Sprague could use to offset some of our utility bills. That was the notion at first. And the way we came about doing it is we had to figure out, all right, what about tanks is different from traditional solar? And there are a few different things that are definitely different. So first, you can't put a traditional rigid glass panel with a heavy steel racking system like you see on most rooftop systems. You needed a thinner, lighter, more flexible panel that wasn't going to add too much weight to the roof. So we use thin film flexible solar modules that have a peel and stick backing that go right on the top of the tank. It'll protect the tank. I'm going to get into that a little bit more. The configuration is uses stringing that's very similar to what we do with traditional glass panels. And there's a 1,000-volt direct current inverter-based system. And the way we make that work within the hazardous classified environment and fuel tanks is by running it overhead and locating those inverters along with the panels themselves outside of that area. So we locate it far from the area of containment. So the panels that we source for this are 25-year warranty panels. The system could last even longer than that, but the warranty's for 25 years. The inverters have a 10-year warranty. And the nice thing about this too, above and beyond what you can see with traditional solar, is that they can withstand hurricane strength winds, very, very high winds. And if you think about it, that makes sense because you've got them adhered directly to the top of the tank. Wind can't get underneath them like they could under a traditional system, which is mounted above the roof. And they can also withstand 1-inch hail. And that's been important to a lot of our operators when considering doing it in our own terminals. So what are the benefits of solar? Similar to the benefits that you have with traditional solar. Lowered carbon emissions, scope 1 and scope 2 emissions are very important. Things that people need to achieve in lots of different industries, especially in the fuel industry. So this is certainly going to do that because you're offsetting emissions that would otherwise be made through coal or whatever it is that needs to be burned to create electricity. And then the other benefits that are more specific to the tank environment are maintenance. So if you think about it, we're prepping the tank to begin with a formulated a different type of painting solution, which will give you a 20-year maintenance-free environment. And then we're overlaying that coating with panels which are going to give further protection against UV radiation, against water. So it's going to protect the roof of the tank further from corrosion. And then even we've done testing on the panels, it actually keeps the roof of the tank cooler, which is also important. And then there's the other power resiliency issue, which we're going to talk about more in a second, but power quality is going to be more and more in jeopardy as there's more and more demand for power. So if that's a concern, solar is going to give you another source of power that you can add to the grid power that you're getting, or whatever other power sources that you have. And then pricing, which I think is really the biggest benefit of solar, especially because we're looking at a 10-year demand curve for electricity, which is the highest that we've seen since electricity was invented. So this do-it-yourself energy will alleviate the need to actually buy electricity from a grid, which can raise their prices whenever they want to. Every year it's a different price, and we're seeing that that's going to be increasing a lot. So the energy that the solar system is producing is really eliminates a high percentage of that unpredictable electricity cost and that sunk cost that it's going to be over the next 25 years. And if you think about the finance folks in the company, what they dislike the most is unpredictable costs. So you never know what that energy budget's going to be from year to year. So this is a way of taking control of that. To give an example, we'll look at a current rate that a terminal may pay for electricity on average. And in this example, it's 11.44 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's today. But if you project that out 10 years, you're looking at a very conservative rate of 2.5% electricity price inflation over those 10 years, and then you end up with 14.64 cents. So we're talking about them going up a certain amount every year that we don't know. So that's a 25% total increase, even if we use 2.5% every year. So what we actually think is going to be coming, and there's some of these are links, and if you want, I can send this deck out so you can click on these links later, is that we're looking at a 5-year forecast for U.S. utility peak load growth has already increased from 24 gigawatts in 2022 to 166 in 2025. And so that's a factor of 7 in just those 3 years. And what's forecast to come even further after that, as hundreds of data centers are planned, millions of electric vehicles are going to be plugged into the grid, all the data processing, all the AI, all the crypto, that's all going to be demand on the grid that it's not capable of handling. So this is a good hedge against doing that. So that's one of the key benefits of solar, is that it's going to become one of those things where it just becomes untenable to purchase it anymore, and you have to bring it in-house and do it yourself. So to sort of illustrate what solar does to the demand curve for electricity, we have winter and summer. So this winter graph on the left shows the blue line. I don't know if you can see it from back there, but the blue line is the base load, which you would have as your load for electricity without solar. The orange line is the solar production, and the gray line is the load with solar. So as you can see, the gray line is going down as the solar goes up. So the net benefit in winter is great, and then in summer it's even better. And you'll notice in the summer that the solar curve goes higher than the actual load, which means that the solar is producing more than the company's consuming. So in that case, with net metering, that extra electricity goes back into the grid, and you get credits for that, so that when the sun isn't shining and you're using electricity, your meter is in effect not rolling backwards anymore, it's rolling forwards again. So you're getting the benefit of all that extra electricity production in most states which have net metering. So that's a pretty decent illustration of that. And so the benefits of working with Sprague directly. So the technology which I talked about before, which was those exclusive distribution agreement for thin film panels, are only allowed to be installed by us in the tank environment. So that's a benefit and an advantage that we have. We've also engineered this directly for fuel tank environments. We have done it so that we design it for fuel tank inspections, protect against corrosion. That's what the panels do on top of the roof. And then we've come up with an installation protocol which allows you to fully operate the terminal with no interruptions throughout that entire process, which was important to our own terminal operators as they looked at what we wanted to do in our own very own terminals. Other benefits is our in-house maintenance expertise. So our trained internal staff will be the ones who do the operations and maintenance of it after it's installed. Most companies will do a third-party contractor, which will come out and do it, but since we know tanks and we know solar, our own internal staff is going to come out and do the maintenance and operations over the life of the system. We've also designed it so it's inspection friendly. Our tank folks internally said, well, what do we do for an API inspection? You know, if we're going to have people going on the roof. So we designed it very specifically for that by creating walkways between the rows of panels. And then everything could be done for an API 653 without removing any of the panels at all. We've done them on our own tanks without issue. And then also the safety procedures. This was a big thing that we needed to solve for our own terminal operators. We've gotten it down. So very purpose-built safety measures, including specialty lockout-tagout protocols, emergency shut-off processes, and everything integrated into every system that we built. So we spent a lot of time working on that. And then cost efficiency too. Over the years since we started doing this in 2017, we've optimized the design and construction, so now we have a very cost-efficient system that we can offer other terminals around the world. And so we're actually, talking to different places all over the globe that are looking to integrate this technology for their own terminals. So what are the operational considerations? So we have to make sure that the panel layout doesn't impede normal operations. And as far as Class 1 Division 2 is concerned, we have to put a 5-foot setback around all the gauges, the gauge hatches, roof vents, painter's posts, all have to be accessible, and we can't panel 5 feet around any of those. So that's going to be a necessity in order to keep it Class 1 Div 2. And then if there's additional critical areas that need to be accessed by the terminal staff, we'll identify those prior to installation and incorporate them into the design. And then we'll even train the on-site staff to do visual inspections of the system just to make sure everything is working okay. Panels in general for all types of solar pretty much run by themselves, but there is some operations and maintenance that you want to do in order to make sure everything is working as it's supposed to, and we can actually train internal staff to do that. So it's usually visual inspection that's required to identify any issues, and then just making sure that all the modules, the solar modules, the inverters, the junction boxes, cable trays are secure and in place. That's really most of what inspections are. On top of the fact that we've got remote monitoring, so you can log into a portal and see exactly how much electricity the system is producing. We see that, the terminal operators see that, and then you can also tell by that if everything is operating as it should. So big questions as we develop this. I'll go into a little bit deeper on API 653. So full tank roof access is maintained, as I mentioned before. Inspection points can be integrated into the panel layout as needed, so we'll put that into the design at the get-go. We'll do visual inspections of the tank roof surface. You don't have to remove panels in order to do that. And appurtenances, the visual inspection of appurtenances is also fully supported. And then, of course, the exposed coated areas that don't have panels on them, can also be accessible for inspection. And even ultrasonic thickness testing can be conducted so that it's either random or targeted. You can perform that as required so that you can see that the thickness, even with the panels in place, is still at the thresholds that it needs to be at. And then if, in the event that you need to check anything under a panel, they can be removed pretty easily just by scraping them off, and then you can reapply them after. So the safety protocols as follows. I mentioned Class 1 Division 2. We've designed it to meet these requirements, avoiding those areas around the vents and the gauges and things like that, which I talked about, so that it meets Class 1 Division 2. And then monitoring systems as well. The monitoring detects any arc flash or ground fault. Its built-down shutdown system in the system will shut it off if, in the unlikely event, it detects any of these arc flashes or ground faults. And then isolation. The system really prioritizes safety with multiple layers of isolation. This is, again, another thing that we required, not only for the fire marshals, but permitting for all the different jurisdictions that need to permit in the tank area that we had to surpass in order to install it at our own locations. So we divided each tank roof into 2 sections. Each has its own individual disconnect. There's a full system disconnect switch, isolates the entire system from the utility connection. And then finally, there's a third switch, which activates isolation of solar energy from the top, which is an added safety measure in case a first responder ever needs to walk in the containment area. So this was really important. We needed to do this in order to make this permittable or permissible to be installed. So briefly want to talk about one of our sample projects. What you see in the picture is a design which shows a little bit of the walkways, kind of far away, but you can see the walkways that we've put in there. But these tanks have a significant surface area, and you can put a lot of solar on top to generate a lot of electricity. So this particular system size on 5 tanks is a 600 kilowatt DC system, and the production is 611,000 kilowatt hours. So that's a big chunk of electricity that you're not having to pay for the grid for. And this is what we did at we're doing right now at our Bridgeport terminal. So the estimated annual avoided energy cost is $96.5, and then over the first 20 years of the system, that's going to be $2.2 million of avoided energy. So it makes sense from a financial standpoint that you're going to be able to avoid all these potential utility costs. And again, this is thinking that it's only going to go up 2.5%. If the utility costs go up even more, we're going to be seeing even greater savings and cost control from solar. What questions can I answer at this point? Here's my contact information if you'd like to contact me and get a copy of the deck. But did any of the slides bring up any questions that anybody would like to ask at this point?
When does it become less feasible for an owner? Like I'm thinking more of a smaller bulk plant, right? They have 10,000, 20,000 gallon tank. Does it make sense for them to do something like that, or is the square area on top of the tank just not worth it? Are you looking at your bulk million gallon tanks?
Right. Yeah. There isn't an exact threshold of, and the way we look at it is diameter, because that's how we can calculate the area of the roof of the tank. So there isn't an exact threshold. I would say it starts to make more and more cost efficiency when you have a 75-foot tank roof diameter. So the area there is going to produce enough electricity to justify some of the basic labor costs, the permitting costs, and some of the equipment costs. As the tank gets bigger, you're going to be able to get even more justification of that cost. So on the smaller tanks, probably not. Each time you do an individual small tank, there's some redundancy in costs. So as a working figure, we've seen 75 feet, depending on where it is. If it's someplace that gets tremendous sun very far south, it might be a little bit smaller, that it can make sense. But the more solar irradiance that you have and the more production that you have, the more cost efficient it's going to be, as well as the higher the electricity price that you're paying. And that's also very critical. If you're paying a high price of electricity right now, then you can justify doing this because every kilowatt hour that you're now spending on the utility is going to be done in-house yourself, and you knock down all those costs. So that's a really big factor is that price of electricity. Sure.
So this is a leading system that seems kind of add-on. Are y'all planning on working with any actual manufacturers or those sorts of things to better or make like a tank ready for this kind of system?
Yes, I'm actively pursuing those kinds of relationships because there are things you can do at the construction phase of putting a tank up, which are going to make it even more cost efficient to do that. There are things that you can do on the roof. Sometimes you can put on, when roofs are constructed on the ground, you can apply the panels there instead of hauling them up to the top. So if we can build the process of doing solar into a tank construction design protocol, I think that's going to be a big step for us. So it's something we're interested in.
So it seems a lot of these are external floating roof tanks. Are any plans to figure out ways to get this installed on internal floating roofs, like the domes or other things like that, I guess, to try to bring that benefit to them, especially here in Texas after Harvey.
Right.
A lot of those external floating tanks sank or covered up. So just was curious, if you had any process on that.
Definitely. So external floating roofs, I don't really see a way, yet, that we can put solar on that because it's a moving roof. Sometimes it's shaded because it's lowered inside the tank. Internal floating roofs, yes. We can certainly do that. And then obviously a fixed roof is ideal because there's not many obstructions on top of it. But geodesic is something we're working on also. I think we can do geodesic tanks. So that's another option because I'm seeing the industry moving more toward geodesics. There's more and more of those popping up.
One last question.
Sure.
So, what about compatibility with on-site storage systems? So, batteries or anything like that built into like backup systems or other things like that?
Yes, we can do battery systems. We've done several battery systems also, and in certain cases that can make sense. So it does integrate with storage. That helps with power stability. If there's outages, that also helps. And if there's peaks in your electricity demand, you can actually hit the battery when those peaks occur, and that lowers the price even further. And then so that, we've definitely been able to engineer with tank solar as well as other types of solar. And then, for regular generators too, there's a switch that we put in there so, the solar will kick in and the generator will kick off. And the generator, will kick in when the solar it's at night. So that's been engineered too, so that it works with multiple types of storage and generation systems.
Can you walk on the panels, just out of curiosity? You can step on them?
You can. It's not recommended, and the only reason for that, they're made to really be walked on, but if a worker's got a piece of gravel in their boot or they scuff it a little bit, it's not going to produce quite as well. It's not going to destroy the panel, but so we just don't recommend walking on them. But and that's one of the reasons we love the walkways too, so that folks don't need to walk on the panels.
Get after those guys.
Sorry?
So you'll have to get after those guys in that picture.
Yeah, they got in trouble for that, I think. No, I think we for a while were walking on the panels and this is really part of the story of how we learned how this works, and we realized that, all right, these are getting scuffed up a little. Why are these panels producing a little less? And then we looked at this picture and we're like, oh, that's why. Okay, sorry, in the back on the right.
The class 1 Div 2 area that you explained, the entire roof is not class 1 Div 2, it's just where the vents are coming out, is that how I understood?
That's right. 5 feet around the vents. I think class 1 Div 1 is if you get too close to the vents. So we stay out of that. You don't want to be in class 1 Div 1. We probably could do it, but it's better for permitting to just leave it out of those areas.
And what would you do for maintenance purposes? Would there be a high voltage potential that's going on there that you can't get away with? The sun's shining, you can't turn the thing off, right? It's there, there isn't voltage, which.
Yeah, you can certainly turn it off, but the higher voltage areas of it, we did this on purpose, where the inverters are located, are run via conduit off the top of the tank, telephone poles to outside of the dike, outside of the hazardous classified area. So that's where most of the current is. There is current in the panels, but not a hazardous level of current. So we had to look at all that when we installed these at our own terminals.
So your inverters are several hundred feet away from.
Whatever length it takes in order to get them installed near the panels and the meters that are away. Just like you can't put an electrical panel inside the area. We're connecting to the panel.
So we'll place the inverters next to where the panel is, and that's outside of that classified area. Brad?
Yeah, David, just one question. So sometimes coatings on roofs fail, so you've got them stuck down. When you pull those panels up, how easy is it to reattach, or is it a new strip on the back and then put those back in?
It's you really just kind of melt the glue like with very low heat, like a hairdryer type thing,
Gotcha.
and then it comes off pretty easily, and then you can just lay it right back down in the footprint.
Okay.
What else can I answer from the group? These are some good questions. Well, thank you very much. Come visit us down at our booth if you want to learn more about it. We're over at 615 down in the conference area. But I appreciate your attendance today. Thanks for your interest.